Nigeria, one of the most populous countries in the world, is unique in terms of religion. It is home to three major religions, two of which are notorious for conflict. Christianity and Judaism are forced to cohabitate in a way that avoids constant conflict. Religions in Nigeria today are a cause of colonization. During 1914, modern Nigeria emerged into two separate colonies, the North and the South, under British rule. Colonization plays a significant role in the conflicts of Nigeria because an overwhelming majority of the northern population is now Muslim, while Christianity is strong in the southern region. Although it is common to have civil strife, civil war, minority nervousness, and violent clashes, Nigeria is one of the most unstable states in Africa. A number of conflicts increased in 1999 when Nigeria transitioned into civilian rule after many years of military rule. Many of these conflicts are ethno-religious. This means that conflicts involve different ethnic groups that identify by different religions. This can be a tense subject in a country where 42.8% of the population claims to hold their identity in their ethnicity, and an additional 21% claims to identify by their religion, with the average person claiming to be very religious. Awareness of differences in religion and ethnicity is magnified when there is more than one religion or ethnicity present. Sometimes, this personal identity can conflict with community identity. This is especially true when one lives in a region of the country where one identifies with a religion that is different from the majority of the population. Generally, the majority of the northern half of the country is occupied by Muslims, and the southern half identifies mainly as Christians. Many of these conflicts, ranging from low-intensity contestations to full-blown battles, occurs along the lines where those two regions meet. An additional factor that contributes to the massive conflict within Nigeria is how much oil can be found here. The oil industry is known for having its own set of conflict and corruption, and this adds on to the tension and conflict found within this state. Many people look at the government to help ease these conflicts. While the government does not persecute based on religion, they also don't do anything to stop the violence or ease the tensions. Since this conflict is a touchy subject for most everyone in the country, they have chosen to avoid getting involved. There is a lot of interaction between politics and ethnicity and religion, which is why it seems so difficult to change. There are many different ideas about how to address these issues, but it often involves an outcome that is more favorable for one group over another, which is why nothing gets changed. Many political elites have taken advantage of this conflict to gain power, while the government is avoiding taking any action.
There are numerous socio-political aspects that serve at the root of this conflict between Christians and Muslims within Nigeria. Political and economic marginalization is gaining religious and ethnic undertones, and vice versa. The current constitution declares that there is no state religion, which only heightens the conflict between the Muslim-based North regions and the Christian-centered South regions. The government of Nigeria plays a major role in contributing to this conflict, the severe clashes and acts of terrorism, and to ethnic tensions and economic disparities. These leaders fail to realize that not recognizing the true reason for this conflict only fuels further resentment between the religious groups. Government officials have released various statements saying that the country of Nigeria isn't in danger of splitting up. However, it has been stated that there is the potential for tilting the country into open civil strife. Boko Haram is the Nigerian Islamic militia responsible for much of the outward violence occurring in the country. Boko Haram, which envisions a purely Islamic society, exploited the frustrations of pious Muslims who struggle to live faithfully in a society that is rife with corruption and that happens to be led by a Christian president. The violence that comes from this extremist group, though stemming from the north, is directed at both the Christian and Muslim regions, both religious parties. For example, there have been numerous coordinated attacks on the economic capital of Nigeria's impoverished and mostly Muslim north. Specific bomb blasts that occurred at this location in 2012 aided the escape of several detained Boko Haram members and ripped through the government's buildings in the crowded city of 9 million, killing at least 150 people. This is just one example in a series of brutal attacks that occurs every day, threatening to worsen relations between Christians and Muslims in Nigeria. The conflict provoked by Boko Haram has made and continues to make peace between Christians and Muslims seemingly unattainable. It is apparent that there have been attempts to relieve the tensions between the two groups. In the past decade, a political body representing Nigeria's Igbo people in the southern region of Kano, who are mostly Christians, asked governors in the group's southern heartland to provide transportation for as many as 3 million people seeking to flee the mainly Muslim north. However, with the overall leadership that fails to recognize the severity of the conflict, these efforts unfortunately tend to be in vain. Nigeria also fails to persecute those guilty from either party. Those who directly partake in the conflict are prosecuted, but sometimes that simply consists of an arrest for only a few hours. The lack of proper punishment for crimes stems from the unclear lines of authority within the country, particularly between the federal police and state governments. From an economic standpoint, the oil flowing from the Niger Delta regions has been of little benefit to the already struggling citizens. However, the violent acts that occur within the country often stunts any chance at potential economic growth. Nigeria, Africa's third largest economy after South Africa and Egypt, is expected to grow by 6.6% this year, according to the International Monetary Fund, outpacing the 5.8% average growth rate across sub-Saharan Africa. There have been many actions taken in attempt to distract from the violence occurring. To spur growth and create jobs within Nigeria, leaders have pledged to enlist private partners to redevelop the country's abysmal road network and power grid. However, Boko Haram's brazen attacks have repeatedly overshadowed these plans to overhaul Nigeria's economy. The violence between the Christians and Muslims continues to affect the infrastructure of Nigeria as a whole, bringing conflict to the entirety of the nation.
The conflict in Nigeria is political, economic, and ethnic with a religious dimension. It is more than a clash between Christianity and Islam. In fact, most conflicts in Nigeria are based on the land, space, and resource competitions due to poor living conditions and the fact that the wealthy control the state and resources of the country. For more than anything else, the greatest obstacles Nigeria faces from this conflict are insecurity of lives and poverty due to assassinations and the helplessness of security agents to handle criminal attacks. The increasing number of unemployed Nigerians only worsens with the situation. For most Nigerians, the pressing problems of everyday survival remain the highest immediate priority. Furthermore, these violent conflicts have compelled several Nigerians to attempt a redefinition of their identity as fallouts of emotive feeling and perceptions. In Nigeria, there is an interaction between politics and ethnicity and religion. While adherence to belief systems can help to develop a sense of belonging and purpose, they can easily lead to intolerance, discrimination, and violent militancy. Several efforts have already been made to manage these conflicts, such as communication between the two groups and government security forces. However, there has been little to no positive transformation toward reconciliation. The failure to find a solution to the violence has been blamed on the inability of politicians to separate political interests from the corporate interests of the state. The practice of sending special military task forces for internal security duties, even if they work in the most professional manner, is only meant to put off the fire. It should only be a short-term measure because the military is not in a position to find solutions to this conflict. Nigeria is a third world country and their rules and regulations cannot be enforced as they are in the United States. In America, we have freedom of speech, meaning that we are free to talk about issues that affect us. But in Nigeria, such talk can increase the ethnic-religious rivalry among the many villages. As a proposed solution, Nigeria's government should devise a new constitution that defines the rights and privileges of citizenship in terms of residency rather than nativism, ancestry, and religion.
It should devolve power over resource distribution and development from the central government to local districts. With this new constitution, the running of governmental affairs should be done in a positive and progressive manner beneficial to the people of Nigeria, such as transparency of the government, separation of powers, and responsiveness to Nigeria's needs. Public voices of religious leaders are also important at all levels. If such voices are silent, peace is an unlikely outcome. If conflicts between Muslims and Christians remain the same, not only will lives of people be affected, but also the economic growth, political, social, and economic instability will continue to occur. There is need to create awareness among the Muslim and Christians to respect each other and show some responsibility towards their country. In summary, the conflict between Christians and Muslims in Nigeria displays how religious and economic grievances can occur and coalesce into a dangerous mix that threatens a nation's stability. Despite this conflict, there are places within Nigeria that exist in harmony. Though it is the responsibility of the government to show that it will not tolerate religious violence, the nation of Nigeria cannot resolve these issues alone. Other countries such as the United States are needed for aid and assistance. It is vital that other countries also invest in the well-being of Nigeria, not only from a moral standpoint, but from an economic standpoint as well.